My name is Shane Koolman, and I am with NAU Esports as the marketing officer.
My name is Dion Bradley. I'm the current president at NAU Esports.
Uh, my name is Rachel, and I was the founder and former president of NAU Esports.
All right, thank you guys both for joining me today. So I just want to start a dialogue, because I think it's really interesting to see the comparisons and the growth that the club has made since its founding. And since we have one of the founders here today, we just thought we may have a little discussion between the two of you. So I'm just here to facilitate that discussion, ask questions to you both, and then kind of have this back and forth, just talking about the club and how it's changed and how it's grown. So I guess let's start off with Rachel. If you want to just talk about how it was like, starting the club and what that kind of looked like.
Yeah, so the club, when it first started, wasn't its own entity. It was actually basically like a child of the Association for Computing Machinery Club, which is the club for computer science majors. At the time, I was the president of ACM, and then as our for fun event, we hosted LANs, which were in the engineering building. That was like a long-standing relationship with the building manager that predates me. And as their building restrictions got stricter, they kind of just extended that, since our relationship with them were so went back for so long. But eventually, what started off as just people within engineering, that group, I'm so sorry. Where was I? Relationship with the building manager. Anyway, so as it started off with just engineering people, basically, and then as word kind of got out, we started reaching out to a whole bunch of people who were already sort of competing in their game. And then just through word of mouth, we weren't really doing any PR officially or anything like that. It just slowly grew, but definitely not to probably the capacity that it is today.
Yeah, so I guess if it's kind of we have definitely taken on some changes since then. I think the biggest change is really what happened when me and Dion joined the group here, because there was just a lot going on with that, bringing on new officers, and we really kind of ramped everything up. Because I jumped on right away as a marketing officer, and then Dion joined. If you want to speak to it, you joined as secretary, right? So
yeah,
you want to speak about that, once we came on, what the club looked like when we joined.
Sure. Yeah. So at the time, like you said, I joined as the secretary, and Gabriel was our previous president. And I think at that point it was still scattered in a sense. People knew sort of what esports was, and that we had a club on campus for it, official esports club. And then through that name is when we started to do smaller LAN events you've been doing. And those were in the engineering building. Yeah. Yes. In there. And we had I think we had one or two that were in there, and they're pretty successful, turnouts and things like that. And so we're well, since we already have all these people, and we're sort of trying to gather all these people, because it was kind of just scattered games that were all kind of under the name of the club, but no real uniformity to it. We're we can do a game on LAN event, or just a whole bunch of games. People that are in the club and outside of it can come in and join and play. I think that was also one of our first catered, second or first time actual big catering. So we had Sodexo come with food. We had outside vendors like Red Bull come in and set up a Red Bull cooler, things like that. We had to talk to companies and different collegiate esports organizations, and they helped us get pricing. And I think that's what really helped kind of solidify it, because then people kind of understood that this is NAU Esports. Okay. And then that's when we started being able to gather more games under the esports banners, sort of centralizing our Discord. And then as that grew, then we had the want and the need of people saying oh, well, we're like first in the West Coast, and like no one knows that, and we beat like ASU and U of A, and I think that's pretty cool. And we're like, okay, sure, like let's promote it. And that's when like Shane's roles marketing sort of like exploded and like grew out that way, just because there's more need to promote like the people and the players. And then sort of like in that transition time, I was like secretary, and I was vice president like briefly, and then I became president right after that. And sort of, yeah, not just, it was just like a really big snowball. We kind of like, I think you and Gabe kind of pushed it up the hill, and then me and Shane just kicked it down there, and now it's growing really big. So
Yeah, that's crazy. Like before, when we would host like our lands, like there was no plan. It was mostly just like everybody bring their machine, and then like based on interest, then we kind of like figured out what games people wanted to play. And then if you wanted to like jump in, like, so at the time it was like League, there was a huge like CSGO following at that time too. And then StarCraft. And then we had TVs at the time as well. So we were also asking people to like bring in their consoles. So like then you could jump in to play like those games as well. But we didn't have any sponsorship for the club though. Like we had our own like snack thing, and it was like a honor system, right? Like
okay.
you we put like a little sign on like how much it was, and then just based on honor system you like paid for it. So we our treasurer for ACM would go out to Sam's Club and like buy, or Sam's Club, Costco, but anyway,
Sam's
one
Club,
of them,
whatever.
yeah, Sam's Club. Yeah, we would go out and buy like the drinks and the snacks like before these events. But that's cool that you guys have like finally gotten sponsorship and stuff like that to provide for the club.
Makes it a lot easier, I will say.
Yeah.
Free stuff's always nice for sure.
Truly.
So it's like really cool to see like all the like differences, and like, you know, like just like the awesome growth and like where it came from. Like I never knew until now that it started as like a little like baby branch of the computer club, you know. It's a really crude name for it, but I'm simplifying.
Yeah.
You know, so it's just crazy. If you wanted to like maybe talk like it like in like how like the growth you saw from like it starting as a baby, you kind of already touched on that a little bit, but maybe like if you want to like further show, like did you like really like, I'm saying like a lot, did you see really where it was headed, or did you have any idea of like what you wanted the club to be when you were president or anything like that?
Well, at the time it was just easier to host it under ACM because I didn't know of any faculty who were interested in being the faculty member of a club like that. So it was just easier to informally call it the esports club without it being actually registered like as a club with its own faculty member. And also to like piggyback off of like ACM's relationship with the building manager, because I didn't feel comfortable like rebranding it into its own thing and then taking that to the engineering building manager and being like, hey, I know that you made this deal with ACM, but you know, do you like me enough to
you want to
like,
jump it up there, you know?
Yeah, right. And I love the building manager. Unfortunately, I like can't, I'm totally blanking on her name, but she was super nice. And like, you know, I always made sure to like bring back stuff from Hawaii to like, thank you. I remember all the nice things you did for me. So please let us keep doing this. It was a lot of favor based really at the time. And like, that's why it felt safer to keep it under ACM. But from what I had heard, and understandably, right, like Eckhard Dory, who was the ACM faculty member, kind of wanted to distance himself and ACM like from esports, just because it didn't quite align, you know, with the computer science thing, and stuff like that. But that was after my presidency, so don't like totally quote me on it. It's just kind of what I've heard through the grapevine. But like in terms of like the vision, there really like wasn't anything. Like I think it was just interesting to see people who wanted to get together to play together in a world where uh like the LAN experience, or like the old school like gaming cabinet experience was like is no longer, I guess, a thing in our society, right? And it was something kind of interesting that the ACM club like kind of held onto, because like ACM was interested in hosting these LANs, right? Where ironically you would get together, and you would never expect that from engineering people, to like get together physically and like see each other and hang out with each other like outside of class. And ACM also had gotten funding to build their own gaming cabinet, which at one point in time was actually hosted in the lobby of the engineering building. You could just like play games that computer science students built for that cabinet. And so there was some kind of piece that a lot of us were like holding on to, even though like I personally have never experienced like going out and like playing arcade games, or like actually going out and like being at a LAN. Like, but it was something that like I would like that's the only time in my whole life, like ever since leaving NAU, like I've never experienced anything like that. The closest to a LAN party that I have now is just sitting in the same room with my boyfriend while we play the same game, like back to back, right? Like I have never ever experienced in my life ever again, and I don't think that I ever will, like that feeling of like 30 people in the same room, either like watching the same game or like playing the same game. It's just such like a unique experience that I think that everybody should try at least once in their life, right? Like
Yeah, I totally agree. And it's so interesting to hear like, the club started as really just like this awesome place for people to get together and, mimic that experience and have LANs and stuff like that. And now it's grown to a point where we can have our last LAN, obviously before COVID hit, that kind of took that down. Our last LAN, I believe we had 200 people, and it was just in the ballroom. And so it's just like this like crazy growth, and even just bigger community. You have all these different sections, everybody to play their games. And I think we have a habit of flipping breakers.
Oh yeah.
Yeah,
We've
so
had to have I think we've replaced them. And then I think we also hit the bandwidth cap of that building. So when we were in there, they had to actually like not only take down firewalls, but they had to do something else like IT wise specifically just for us because of how much we were using.
yeah,
So they're like bogging
NAU
down the school. So they're like, hey, you guys get your own little corner, and please don't flip any breakers anymore. Thanks.
Yeah, NAU ITS has been such a blessing. They've been so awesome to us, like with helping us with those LAN events. And also Sun Entertainment, who we work with on those LAN events as well, being able to get them really, really heavily promoted out on those email lists, and has been really, really cool. But I guess that'll just jump me to next little bit. What would you say are your like thoughts on what the club has become? Are you disappointed in us? Or are you proud, like with what this thing that you kind of started and was just this awesome place for people to get together, that now it's become a Discord with, I believe we're at 600 now members. We have a Instagram following of almost 500 and growing. And we now have the AML, which is, those 12 computers that are top of the line that people can play and practice on. So what would you say, like, what are your thoughts on that, I guess?
Yeah. I mean, I had mentioned it at our last meeting together, right? But it feels very surreal. Like I never expected that there was so much interest. And to be fair, like it's probably just because I never asked, right? Like that there would be so much interest and drive from both faculty, staff, and students to like do something like more competitively with it. I think the only competitive event that I had ever like heard of or gone to was StarCraft competition with the StarCraft club at the time at ASU. and it was just with the StarCraft team, and that was it. Like that was the only, and it was like it was so small. Like it was like the most intimate thing that I had like ever experienced, and it was like the most awkward thing I've ever experienced, because like both of us, like both NAU and ASU, I don't think we've ever like done anything like that before. And it was just like, we just drove. It was just like such an informal thing of like me and then my friends. And then there was like, I think only like a handful of us. I didn't compete. I was just there to like represent, and like, and now you guys are like breaking the breakers in the Du Bois Center and like that, and having classes, and like, that's just wild. Like, and I think the craziest thing to me was just Norm's involvement in the whole thing. Like that is something like I never ever would have thought. Like at the time, like I didn't even want to like get turned down by faculty just not wanting to be the faculty sponsor of the club, let alone like hosting casting classes, right? Like isn't that like almost every gamer's like dream come true, to get like college credit for doing what you love, like, you know, or like even just right, like just dabbling in it. Like that's really like what the whole college experience is about. And unfortunately, like you don't understand that until you leave college, that like the college experience is not just about like acquiring skills to do a job, because more often than not, you're actually not even going to go into what you went to college for, which is like, so this weird reality that nobody tells you until like you get into the workforce and you start asking people like, oh, what'd you go to school for? And like 9 times out of 10, it's not going to be for that job. And like my biggest regret is like not doing more, like different things, even like with that weren't pertinent to like my degree, right? And this is like the perfect opportunity to like explore like what your opportunities are in life. And I think like this one thing about the esports classes is like it perfectly gives you that sample of like what your life could be like, right, in the real world, not just theoretically taking like calculus 2 and like failing it 3 times, because the first time I took it, it was 8 a.m. and that was the worst thing ever, right? But like, you know, this is some real life shit, right? That like you could make money off of, like in a world, like who would have thought this would be a thing 10 years ago, right? That you could make money professionally doing something like this. And like, this is what college is supposed to be about, right? Exploring those opportunities and having faculty backing to like support you in those potential dreams. So yeah.
Just to like kind of tie on that too, because I know like before you were saying like you were with like the engineering and like their program and stuff like that, and I think that's what like also really helped us too, is sort of when we went like, because Jeremy, like with our faculty advisor for the club, and then like going to Norm and like other communications like communications professors and like faculty, because they already had like a virtual reality section, and then within that like VR like category, they did like app development, they did like project, I can't ever say the word right, but like project augmented reality learning, geez, like that too. So like, yeah, right. So like developing like games and software like that, but for an education purpose. And so when we came to them, we're like, oh, like we do esports. I'm sure people like not only would love to compete, but would also like to learn about, you know, like casting, streaming, like coaching, like all that fun stuff. And then it was just sort of like, oh yeah, sure, we can see that, like, you know, being a good thing. And then I don't know, I guess we got super, like you said, we got super lucky with Norm and some of the like other friends that we made, because they're just like, oh yeah, sure, we like esports. And then like that, we like esports turned into like, you got a class, you got a room, you got computers, and we're like, oh shoot, okay. Not sure what happened within like this like 6-month period, but like I'm not complaining.
Yeah, it really blew us up. It was nice. I guess I'll just kind of close it out and just say if you guys have any questions for each other, for me, if that's relevant, anything like that, we can kind of just have a few little final questions for anybody.
I don't really have any questions, but I do know it probably won't happen while like me and Shane are here because we graduate, but at some point somewhere, COVID will slowly disappear and or not show up. And I guess it's not really a question, but more so an invitation. If we have like another game on land, like in the Dubois, I can't even say it, in the
The boy,
ballroom.
yeah, ballroom, yeah.
You're definitely getting an invitation, so you can, kind of see the dream play out and see all the people that are in there, because I think it'd
Yeah.
be a really cool experience.
Oh my gosh, I would love that. It was something that we had talked about, but couldn't justify doing at the time. Like we didn't nearly have enough people and we didn't even understand like the logistics. And at the time, I think they were going to charge us for like renting out
Mhm.
like that space. Well, at the time, right? Like in the old Dubois, there was like that eating area across from, I don't know if this predates you guys, but
I
like
don't know.
there used to be like that section where they made like pasta and stuff like that, and there was like that eating area like right across from there. And so like we were thinking about hosting it in that like eating area, but then we were thought about like tables, chairs, like how can you even plug into like the ethernet like from
Mhm.
this area? But like, man, you guys got the ballroom, like that's insane. That's But yes, I would like absolutely love I mean, if it's even like a sliver of like amazing as like how I'm imagining it, like I would definitely love to see that. And I guess like my question, I guess for the both of you is like how do you envision this going further? Like how, like what is like the pinnacle? Like, because I obviously like never even thought of this. Like this went totally beyond like my dreams and expectations of like what this could be. And so I'm kind of like curious to hear like what is your guys' vision and like what is the apex like that you guys can think about.
I guess for me, like what I envision is more or less just like esports, but as like comprehensive as like the athletics department, I guess, if that makes sense. So we have like our athletes, our gamers and people that compete, and then we have the coaches and staff that support them, and then we have our casters and like our, I guess, like student base, sort of like learning the game. They're casting. Um, they're putting out like the promotional materials, so our marketing and PR, all that good stuff, social media. And then we also have like the educational side of it. So just like athletics has like physical sciences and like learning how to train, things like that. I think a really cool, it'd be kind of weird game specifically, but I think it'd be really cool to just teach like game strategy and just sort of like being a team player in a greater sense, if that makes sense. Just sort of like what that competitive aspect looks like at the esports level, as well as like at a management level, just because you never hear about all of the like athletic trainers for all the football players, but they are a very pivotal role to to the team. And so I just sort of, for a lack of words, I guess, I'd like esports to be like the athletics department in terms of function and just like the status that it has.
Yeah, I'd have to agree with that. Getting up to that status of being a really big, pivotal wing in NEU's faculty and stuff like that. If we had like full teams, if we could dedicate all of NEU's resources to the esports club, I think it could be insanely valuable, not just for the players and for the esports community in general, to have that kind of recognition and have parents and stuff like that of gamers in high school and stuff like that be able to see the value of joining this, because it is just like any other sport. You can make money doing it and make a more consistent living being in the support structures. You don't ever out age as a coach as much as you do as a player, because players, they lose their response times and stuff like that. So they age out a lot quicker. But coaches, and all the stuff that Dion mentioned, that's a great thing and great skills to learn. And with esports being such a prevalent thing, I think it's not just like, oh, it's college football. It's not real football. It's like, it's college football. If we do esports, it's esports. That's the difference right there. It is esports. It is not like we're just college esports. We are esports. I think that is something that could be really cool, we get all those resources, like Dion's saying, I think that would be really, really awesome.
Yeah.
The dream. But yeah, I guess I'll just close it out by saying thank you to both so much for joining me today. And thank you, Rachel, as well. It's been great to get the insight of where the club came from, and how the value of the community and stuff like that, and also having Dion here to speak to where we are now and everything. It's been really, really awesome. So just want to say thank you guys, and I hope you have a wonderful day.
Thank
Yeah.
you.
Thanks so much for having me.